Well, hello everyone. My name is Alison Woodall and I'm a relocation specialist. That means I get to help you with the financial, logistical, and emotional issues that make moving to a new state so stressful. And usually you're going to see me interviewing realtors or people who can help you move from California. But today I am very excited to be talking to Stephan Hogan. And if you have watched any of my realtor interviews, you'll have heard his song So Long California playing and the intro and the outro. So Stephan, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, I am very excited. I know that Terry interviewed you about a year or so ago, kind of where you were with your move to Nashville. There's probably a lot of people who haven't watched that yet. So I would like to kind of go back to the beginning of your journey. You were raised in Northern California, is that correct?
Yeah, born and raised a little east of Sacramento, about a half hour from Sacramento, if people know where that's at, or an hour from Lake Tahoe in the foothills.
I love that area. We were actually living just south of Stockton for a year and a half. So
Oh,
we went up
we
to
were
Tahoe a lot.
neighbors. We were kind of neighbors.
We were. So I know exactly, where you were born and raised. And so obviously you wanted to be a musician from an early age. When you decided to move to Nashville, how long was it from thinking I need to be in Nashville for my career to actually making that move?
That's a great question. It was a little bit. The interesting thing is, I knew I wanted to be in Nashville in my early 20s, probably. So what I started doing was going out to Nashville. I'd fly, and they were not the most productive trips, to be honest with you, because I didn't really know anybody. I didn't know what to do, and I had a booking agent at the time. He was like, "You need to go to Nashville. You need to go to Nashville and network." And so I'd always come out here, but a lot of failed trips. But I still had this drive, like I need to be there because I do country music, and if you do country music, where do you have to go? You have to go to Nashville. And so it was kind of this desire I had. Fast forward, I got married to my wife, Haley. We've been married 5 years now, just celebrated that 5 year anniversary in August. And the conversation was on the table. And Haley is an adventurer and she enjoys going places and doing new things. And so what had happened was I was having these pitch meetings with publishers online, kind of like what we're doing right now. But instead of like talking with you, I would talk with the song publisher and they'd listen to my music live on the other end. And Haley sat in on one of these pitch meetings, and in the meeting you get 15 minutes with the publisher, and every single one of them in the meeting wanted my contact information and copies of my songs, which is quite rare. And so Haley was like, "What are we doing? We need to get out there." So she was actually the catalyst to us moving sooner than we did, because we were going to stay in California a little longer, save a little more, prepare a little more, and we just kind of took the step of faith and just went for it. And here we are 2.5 years later.
Wow. And I think if you have a supportive spouse, it makes you a little bit braver to leave California or whatever state. My husband was offered a job in California when we were living in Florida. And because I'm also an adventurer, he was like, "Oh, should we, shouldn't we?" And I was like, "Absolutely. Why would we not go to California?"
Yeah,
Because my mentality is if I don't like it, I'll just move again. That's,
totally.
but
Totally.
that wasn't my mentality when I made my first move from Georgia to Florida. That was a lot harder. But I
Oh,
think
sure.
when you first make that move, and you have to have some planning and you have to have a very good reason for moving, which obviously for you, having a career in country music, you have to go to Nashville. So what was the things holding you back? Was there anything holding you in California?
Yeah, family was a big one. All my friends. I'm born and raised there. I'm 30 years old, right? It's like this is all I've ever known. So we're saying goodbye to a job. I had a, good job, financial security, friends, family, you know, comfort, comfortability, which is an enemy, in my opinion. So I was in the mindset of, you know, this is uncomfortable, but I know that I'm going to grow by doing something that's scary. And I think too often people are afraid to take a chance or a risk or get out of their comfort zones, but it's really where we grow the most.
Yeah, well, I was watching your interview with Terry, and you said that the what is it? The enemy of great is good. When you're doing just when everything is good, you want to kind of stay there, but that is what stops you from being brave and achieving greatness, which is one of my favorite sayings.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
believe it.
And so then, when you made the move to Nashville, what was the hardest part of moving?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think a lot of people have that fear. I would think that, anybody that's relocating is gonna fear moving to a new city, not knowing people. Like I think the big thing that I think more than anything is relationships. That's the thing we miss mostly, I think, is people. When you build relationships and you move somewhere new and you're not around those people and you have to figure out what it looks like. And the nice thing is when you do it together as a couple, like my wife and I did, or if you do it with your family, you kind of have, your group of people. Um, and I think that's really important. But I would say the hardest part was figuring out what it looked like to create new friendships. But I also, on the flip side, dig it because it forces you to get out of your comfort zone and network and meet new people and make friends, which is a great thing.
Mhm. I would agree. And for the people who are watching this who maybe aren't in a couple or don't have that family support, when I moved from England to the US, I knew one person, and she actually lived in Tennessee, but near Knoxville, and I was traveling all over. And when you travel by yourself, you really have to put yourself out there, and you have to be more adventurous in some ways. But if I had to choose, I'd much rather move like with my husband, because that's then you've got the best of both worlds. You be single and out there if you need to be, but then you can be in a couple too, and you're never alone. But if you are by yourself, you make it work too. And
Totally.
so obviously you chose Nashville for the music scene.
Mhm.
Do you actually like Nashville as a city? Has it been a good city to move to?
Yeah, I do. I like it. What's cool about Nashville is, and I don't know, I think because I've been to a good amount of cities, and each of them have things that are the same, but each of them have their own little unique thing. And the fun thing about Nashville is that it's so music centered. People here love music, and it's not just country music. It's all kinds of music. And another awesome thing about Nashville is like food. There's more restaurants. You could eat a new restaurant every day forever and not hit them all. And I honestly felt a little bit like when we moved here, we lived downtown and wanted to experience that life. It reminded me a little of I was like, this isn't that crazy different from California in terms of like the kind of people I'm meeting because so many people were just like Haley and I. They moved there and were from out of state, and it was this like melting pot of transplants. It's very rare that I meet someone that says, I'm from Nashville. It's always, I'm from somewhere else, which is cool.
Yeah, Atlanta is very similar. There's very few people, and my husband's born and raised here, but there's very few people in Atlanta. Most people have moved from somewhere else.
Yeah.
So it is, and also then probably the circles that you're moving in, being in the music industry, you're probably going to meet more people as well, who've moved there for their careers.
Oh, totally.
So I'm fascinated by the music industry. My husband and I just moved from California back to Georgia, and we had 2 nights in Nashville. So that was like 6 weeks ago. I have always loved Nashville. I love everything about Tennessee, and Nashville's one of my favorite cities. I would move there tomorrow if my husband could get a job there. But I know a little bit about gigs and things. My husband had dreams of being a drummer, but then became an electrician instead because he wasn't as brave as you to follow his dreams. But obviously as a tourist, you go down Broadway and you see all these bands. As a musician, how hard is it to get that gig on Broadway? Do you start doing gigs in small bars further out in Nashville and you get closer into Broadway, or do you just have to luck out and get that big gig?
Well, that's an interesting question, and it's a good question because I think people have a perception as a tourist as to what it means to be a musician on Broadway versus being a musician in Nashville and having an understanding of how the music business works somewhat. And I'm not saying that I'm an expert by any means, but I will tell you this. If you're a musician on Broadway, most of those musicians are doing it to make money, obviously, and to get their names out there. But primarily, it's a thing that you can do to pay the bills where you're playing music, making a living. However, you're not getting paid great, and it's a crazy grind.
Mhm.
So, the end all be all for a musician in Nashville is not playing on Broadway. However, it's the little writers' rounds that happen in small rooms with quiet people listening to your original music. So, Broadway is a fun thing. It can be a cool way for you to be able to, keep your chops up as a musician, continue to play, perform, getting comfortable on stage. But the real, like, nitty gritty of if you want to make it in Nashville happens when you're working on songwriting. You're sitting in a room with someone and you're creating original works of music, and you're playing those for people that are in the industry. Because to be honest, like you said, you came here as a tourist. Where did you go? Broadway. Where do most Nashville natives and industry people stay away from? Broadway, because it's just crazy down there. It's like a little mini Las Vegas. The streets are crowded. You can't find parking without paying $30, and it's just. But in terms of the playing there, like their gigs you could get, recently had an opportunity to do a gig playing guitar for someone, and it's just like it doesn't pay great. You're playing for tips, but it can be a fun, good thing. But you're not really getting discovered on Broadway, if
Mhm.
that
Well,
makes sense.
it,
Have you
it
heard of
does.
the Have you heard of the Bluebird Cafe before, by chance?
No, I've only ever just done Broadway. I've just done the
Okay.
tourist things.
Well, like it's a fan, like the show Nashville. There was a show a while back called Nashville, and the Bluebird Cafe is this little small intimate venue where Garth Brooks was discovered, and Taylor Swift, and a bunch of people in their early careers. And it's probably doesn't hold more than about 50 people, and like their whole thing is like everyone's got to be quiet, and it's just highlighting songwriters, and that's like these really cool little niches where you can hear and discover talent. And that to me is like what excites me. And I've played there a few times, and those are the places that I try to play, just me and an acoustic guitar. Because if you can sell a song with you and an acoustic guitar, then you definitely can do it with a band anywhere else.
How do you get in front of the right people and get known?
Um, I think a few things, and it's about relationships. Everything comes down to that. And I would say back to when we were talking about moving to a new city, meet as many people as you can. And I'm preaching to myself because it's easy to get into a place once you've lived somewhere for a little while where you know you're certain people and you're comfortable and you're not pushing yourself out your comfort zone to go out and network as much. But really, like the music thing comes down to building relationships and building friendships and not having an agenda. And that's something that I learned, I would say, early in my 20s when I was coming out here before we moved here. Was it's a terrible thing to meet someone, not know them, and try to get something from them. Have a meeting with someone that is in the music business that could do something for you, but you don't have a relationship and you come in expecting that they're going to help you. It's a terrible thing. So now it's all about I want to be your friend for the sake of like building a relationship with you if I like you. And if we don't get along or we don't jive or vibe, like I don't need to try to pursue a relationship with someone just because I'm going to get something out of them. But all that to say, for me, I'll tell you how it worked for me. I did a guitar competition where I was a finalist. I got to play with a guy named Vince Gill, who's currently in the Eagles, replacing Glenn Fry. That led to me coming to Nashville, playing with him, which led to me meeting his manager, which led to some other introductions, which led to other introductions. And then you just end up meeting people through random things. And it all started for me with a Facebook ad that I clicked on that said, enter this guitar competition. And there's not one way, but I will say this. If you work hard and you're good at what you do, people will end up discovering you, finding you, and you'll build those relationships. And it's just a matter of time, especially with social media. You can go on TikTok now, and a lot of the record labels are signing people purely off of having songs that are being successful on TikTok.
I think that the main thing that I take from that, you have to have a skill. Because like
Yep.
I could post songs on TikTok all day and nobody would,
Yeah.
because that's not my talent. But you've obviously got that talent. You can sing, you can play the guitar, and when you combine that talent with the drive and the determination that you have, that I think is the perfect combination for success.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you, and I'm going to say it's incredibly challenging at times. And when you get here, you realize that everybody has an opinion. And that's the weird thing about art. You know, music is art. Songs are one of those things that some people will love an artist, and other people will say, I hate an artist. Oh, I love boy bands. I hate boy bands. I like the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. Come on.
So do I.
You know? Like I remember being in fifth grade, listening with my CD player, the Backstreet Boys on the bus on the way to a field trip. I was like, man, I want to be just like these guys someday. So, what one person loves, another person might not. And so this is the weird part in Nashville and creativity in general, is when you have a bunch of people projecting their opinions onto you as an artist. And the big thing for me is learning I have to do what's in here instead of listening to everybody out here, because everybody's saying something different. And that's a weird thing in Nashville that I don't know if you're not in the creative world, people will understand, but that's personal to me.
Mhm. Yeah, it's, I mean, when I interview realtors, and they'll always say, well, how should I be? Should I be this, like this or like that? And I would say, just be you, because there's going to be someone who listens to me talking to you and goes, oh my goodness, I want to, if I'm moving to that city, that's the realtor I want to use. And then there'll be other people who'll go, oh, no, not my kind of person. And I'm sure there's plenty of people who listen to me doing interviews and hate my accent, yet there's other people who listen to my accent and go, oh, an English accent, that's cool. So I get it, you find the people who you're meant to be with and who love what you do. And in Nashville, you stand a much better chance as a country musician than if you went to England, you'd really struggle. Although Taylor Swift's done a great job at making country, much more accessible.
Yeah, is there country in England? Is that a thing?
Well, you see, now this shows how old I am. I remember when Shania Twain brought country music to England, and before that, like I said, there were country songs, or they were Dolly Parton songs, they were Garth Brooks songs, but we didn't know they were country songs because boy bands sung them. And so all these, my husband's always laughing because if I play like CDs that I used to listen to as a teen, he's like, that's a Garth Brooks song. Why is this boy band singing it? So the music was there, but they changed it for that market. I've not lived in England for 20 years now, so I'm very, very out of touch. But England tends to be new and pop and like, there's a reason that, all these 70s rock bands come to the States and tour in the States, because I grew up I went to college in Sheffield, where Def Leppard are from. No one in Sheffield would listen to Def Leppard, but yet you play a Def Leppard song here and people like my age all go, yay!
Yeah, totally. That's interesting. Different. The interesting thing, and back to something you said at the beginning, I got to say this, and I think this is encouraging to your listeners. And I was having a conversation with someone about this like 2 days ago. Once you move somewhere and leave your hometown and you move for the first time, the idea of moving somewhere else is not scary anymore. Like for me, I'm like, shoot, now that I've done this, I'm alive, I'm fine, I'm healthy, I could go anywhere now. And it's a very freeing feeling. And I bet you feel that same thing, having come to the United States, live in, California, Florida, Georgia. Now you probably feel like you could go anywhere, huh?
Yeah, I mean, to me, my family have lived on the same farm in England for 300 years. And my parents would go traveling, like my mom's South African. My dad was traveling in South Africa, met my mom. She thought, well, I'll go see if England's fun, moved to England with him and never left. So I had that mindset, you travel somewhere, meet someone, take them back to England. And so that first move was easy because I thought I'd meet an American, take him back to England. But then I stayed here. But then I lived in Georgia for 15, 16 years, and that was home. Even though I still have the English accent, I'm American citizen, Georgia is home. But then when my husband said, I want to leave Georgia because it's the only place he'd ever lived. And he got the job in Florida. That was so hard. And I said, I'll give it a year, because if I don't like it, I'll come back. We didn't sell our house. We just rented it out so that I could come back to what I felt was home. And then, like you say, we made that first move and I was like, oh, this is easy. And then when he was offered the job in California, it was just a very easy decision to go see if we like California. Well, that didn't work out. And I have to say, for me, and we'll probably talk about, the hard part about being in Nashville for you. I loved California. I knew it wasn't forever. I knew it was I hope for about 5 years. So when we left earlier than I wanted, it's been very hard transitioning back to Georgia. But now, he's got a job offer in Houston, Texas. He's got a job offer in Miami, and he's got one in Tampa. And even though we've only been back in this house for 6 weeks, I'm like, yes, I could hit the road again. He's got one more move. I'm not doing this will be my final move for 5 years. But yes, you are completely right. When you make that first break, you're like, okay, yeah. So what did you find hardest about, obviously, like financially, because you don't have, as a musician, you don't have that certainty of a 9-to-5 income. Was there anything else that made it hard other than just the financial stuff when you first got to Nashville?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it's just like personal to me, and it all just depends. But Haley and I moved, and my mom moved out here, and my dad moved out here, and Haley's sister moved out here, and her kids, and then her brother moved out here. So like all these people followed us. But I would say like one of the things for me is like I feel a great responsibility for my parents because they left everything to come here also. And you got to figure out what to do to make money, but especially due to COVID and the lack of employer or employees, there are so many places hiring, if you're motivated, you can get a job like that. I miss California geographically. In my opinion, it's the most beautiful state ever. Why? You have the mountains, you have the ocean, different parts of the ocean, Northern California ocean, Southern California ocean. You have the desert. There's so many beautiful places, Yosemite, Tahoe, Monterey, that San Francisco, that you just come to fall in love with when you reside there. For me, I was an hour from the mountains, 2 hours from the ocean. Living in Nashville, I'm 8 hours roughly from an ocean. And so here's my little tip. Every year for my birthday, I go to Southern California. There's a beach called Hermosa Beach. There's a strand of beaches in Southern California: Long Beach, Hermosa Beach, Redondo Beach, Manhattan Beach, that are like south of Los Angeles Airport, LAX. Well, Nashville flies direct to LAX. So you have nonstop flights from BNA, Nashville Airport, to Los Angeles. And most of the time, if you go on, I fly Southwest, but if you go on, you can get a round trip flight. It's like $49 or $59 one way and the same back. So for me, I've been able to go to California, get a rental car in LA because they're cheaper at LAX, and drive and explore. So when I get homesick, I get a cheap flight, I fly back. I go visit some people, I see the ocean, spend a couple days laying in the sun, and then I have that nonstop flight back to Nashville, which is, where can you can't get a flight that cheap to almost anywhere, much less across the country. So that's my little hack. And I would say, like, for people that are moving out here, just because you live here doesn't mean you can't go visit or like fly back, and like see what you miss. And I think that's important because so often people feel like moving is such a definite, I'm stuck there kind of a thing.
And I would agree when I coach people who, worried about leaving and they're worried about leaving family, I always say, if you possibly can, budget for people to either to fly people out to be with you for holidays or birthdays, or for you to fly back to California, or to meet somewhere in the middle. Because when you're apart, it's not necessarily the quantity of time that you spend together, it's the quality of time. Because like my family is still in England. Well, my kids are just as close to my parents, who they see once a year, or like now because of COVID they haven't seen them in 2 years. But when they see my parents, they spend every single moment of, a 3-week period with them and create amazing memories that last them through that year. And when I've been,
Yeah.
away from my friends, when we do get together, we go to Nashville, or we go somewhere fun, and then we create amazing memories in a very short space of time, as opposed to, I've been back in Atlanta 5 weeks now, and I haven't seen some of my friends because they're so busy with their activities in their life, and they're like, well, she's back, so we'll see her whenever. Whereas if I was just here for the weekend, everybody would have come and seen me. So it's quality over quantity.
The way that we live with technology these days and the tools that we have at our fingertips, it's like it really takes off the edge of feeling isolated when you move.
Yeah. Well, I would like to touch on technology because I'm old. So to me, if I met a musician and I needed to support them, I would have gone and bought a CD. So now that's not how the world works. So the people who are watching this interview in the Facebook groups, how can they support you? How do you support a modern musician other than going to gigs and tipping generously? Like in California, do they like you? What do they do to support you?
Yeah. Here's the thing. I've thought about this quite a bit, and if I have some CDs, but honestly, like I would give my music away right now and ask for nothing in return, just because all I want people to do is enjoy my music. And I think for people discovering your music, liking it, connecting with it, and when someone finds me on like Spotify or iTunes or Apple Music or Amazon Music, and they shoot me a message on Instagram and say, "Hey, I found you," or "I listened to this song," and or like So Long California, I've had so many people hit me up and be like, "Hey, we're moving and we were listening to this song the whole car ride across the country." And that's the stuff to me that like connects with me here, you know what I'm saying? Like that's what it's all about. The monetary side of music will come, but when you are doing something like I'm doing, I'm not motivated by, the money. I didn't start it because of the money. And so it's really all about building relationships, building fans. And so if you do dig my music, or you would go and give that So Long California song a listen, um, share it. Tell a friend, "Hey, I discovered this undiscovered, unsigned artist in Nashville, and I really dig his stuff. Go follow me on Instagram." And I think that's the big stuff.
Who are you on Instagram? How do people find you on Instagram?
Stephan, Phan, Hogan, Hogan, and that's my username on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all those places.
Okay.
But I think a lot of folks are on Instagram and Facebook. So if you search me on Facebook, there's a verification badge. So I'm the one with the blue verified badge.
Okay, well, perfect. Well, everybody who's watching this interview, go find Stephan on whatever channel you listen to, download his music, and make sure you like and subscribe and all of those things that you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Anything else that you would like to add before we finish, about to inspire people to leave California?
I think that one of the most important things you can do is get out of your comfort zone. And I think people are complacent and are scared and live in fear. And they think, like we as human beings, I think is a survival instinct, think of worst scenarios and worst possibilities. And when you think about moving, it can be very daunting and overwhelming because you're thinking, you're in survival mode. I think it's really human nature. It's like an evolutionary idea to think, oh, something terrible is going to happen. And so I think it's important for people to understand that when you do something, it's not final. You could always move back, which is probably something you coach people on. Two, it's like, it's exciting. It's cool. It's a new place. It's a new experience. You meet new people and you grow exponentially. My wife and I have both grown, as a couple, physically, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, more since we moved here than any other time or period in our lives. And it's very interesting coming out here and then going back and visiting home, and being, every time I go back, I'm like, I'm really glad we moved. we did the right thing.
Yeah. Well, that is
So, I mean,
wonderful.
I just want to do it. If you're on the fence, there's never the perfect time, you know? And so another thing for people that are interested in moving to Nashville that I think would be important for your listeners to know, like there's some really cool spots outside of Davidson County, which is like what Nashville's in. So if you look like around the city, 30, 45 minutes, the home prices are cheaper. There's some really cool spots. I currently reside in Robertson County, which is a little north of Nashville. Property are cheaper, and there's some beautiful country. You can get some land. I'm on 6 acres in a home that we bought last year, and I mean, just the price of the house, like the value of the house has gone up crazy, but so much more house for the money here, and it's just, you know, a really cool spot. If you're interested, you like country music, good food, and you're ready for a change, it's worth checking out.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. That has been amazing, and I wish you tons of luck with your music journey.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Next time you're in Nashville, hit me up.
I will do. Thank you.
All right, thanks again.